Okay, so yesterday, Russian President Vladimir Putin gave his State of the Nation speech in Moscow. It is amazing how this was reported on. They belittled and mocked him in many of the reports that I saw from the West. It was a speech that was supposedly directed to his people, but it was also directed to the world, to people all over the West who are sick of being told that they're racist, transphobic, or whatever else. And it's hard to hard to argue that angle. It is when somebody says, you know what they're doing to the country? They're destroying the Western set of values. You're like, yeah, and that is the point. It's a trap. I'm going to read what he said yesterday, and I want you to think about whether or not you agree with him. He said, Western nations are using Ukraine as their puppet. Yeah, I think so. I think Ukraine might be a part of that, but there's something dirty going on here. He said they distort historic facts and constantly attack our culture, the Russian Orthodox Church, and other traditional religions of our country. I haven't heard any of that anywhere. They cannot ignore the fact that Russia cannot be defeated on the battlefield. Well, I don't think I agree with that either. So they're waging increasingly aggressive information attacks. First, all targeting the young generations, lying on every step, distorting historical truth, attacking our culture, the Russian Orthodox Church, and other traditional religious institutions in our country. Now, that was for his people. Then he says to his people, and look what they're doing in the West to their own people. It's even worse. Look at what they're doing. They're destroying the institution of family, their cultural, historical identity, and the destruction of the family, the national identity, the perversion and abuse of children up to pedophilia are now accepted as a new norm. Is the West destroying the institution of the family? Yes. Cultural, historic identity? Oh, yeah. Destruction of the family? Mm-hmm. Cultural, national identity? Yep. Perversion and the abuse of children up to pedophilia? Yeah. Uh-huh. And he goes on, and priests are forced to bless same-sex marriages. As it became known, the Anglican Church plans to consider the idea of gender-neutral God. Millions of people in the West understand they are being led to a real spiritual catastrophe. I think all of that is true. He then says, maybe we should take a look at this. Maybe they should take a look into the scripture, into the holy book of any religion. It says that family is a union between a man and a woman. And these holy texts are now being increasingly doubted in the West. The Anglican Church is considering a gender-neutral God? Okay, there is nothing false about that last part. And on the surface, if you're just wondering, where is a leader that is going to stand up against this stuff? You hear Putin say it and you're like, okay, he's a really bad guy, but listen to what he's saying. All he's doing is describing the evil of Marxism that has taken hold in the Western world. Yesterday, NPR praised puberty blockers and sex change surgeries for children. Most sane people are tired of the leftist takeover of culture, and Putin knows it. And because there's a vacuum of anyone in leadership around the world that will stand up for the things that we have always known to be true, there's a giant vacuum. And when you have a vacuum that big, even the coldest-blooded murderer mass murderer can step into that vacuum and go, I'm here. This is why his message is so dangerous. It is a bait and switch. So what is it that he's actually saying? What is it he's trying to accomplish here? This is so critically important because it's like a KGB influence operation. Putin's goal is to gain allies and to seed doubt. Everyone is tired of left-wing extremism all throughout. Only the elites are still into it. And it is a dangerous time for people making allies with people who make points similar to ours. I have said for 25 years, you must know who's standing next to you. They might agree with you on several points, but when it gets down to the details, the devil literally is in the details. Putin is interested in Russia and Russia alone. Don't forget that he called the collapse of the Soviet Union the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. Putin's goal is to frame Russia as the Roman Empire, battling all the evils and depravities of the Western world. But I want you to be very clear on this. That is the wicked punishing and killing the wicked. He might be speaking words that are true, but he himself is a false prophet and a liar. He is not a supporter of the rights that only come from God. He's a bloodthirsty killer. Freedom of speech, he murders anyone who disagrees. We merely silence them through cancel culture or through private-public partnerships. They're both evil. He defines us as evil and speaks to the horrors that we're inflicting on Christians or Christianity, on gender-confused children. But his own KGB murdered millions of the deep faith, sent them to camps for re-education at best. And he approves of murder squads to kill homosexuals. It is, again, the wicked against the wicked. Do not be fooled. There's no good guy in this fight. And he is doing exactly what I have warned you of for the last almost 10 years. And these tactics are traced back to one guy. I have told you he is the most dangerous man in the world. He is a radical philosopher named Alexander Dugin. He is Putin's bizarre mystical guru. In his book, Foundations of Geopolitics, Dugan pushed the idea that the U.S. must be counteracted on the global stage. And the book became a standard-assigned reading in the 21st century at the General Staff Academy for Russian military leaders. So all of the military leaders have been raised on Dugan. He went on to become a Putin advisor without portfolio, with Putin echoing, sometimes in a matter of hours, according to experts, expressions Dugan was using in his media broadcasts. Dugan believes that America is the Antichrist, leading the world. And by the way, I'm beginning to think that that might be true too, that we might be the great Babylon, that we might be what our scriptures foretell. Maybe that's why America's not in the end time revelation, because maybe we're the problem. We're giving birth to it. It seems like we might be on that road. I pray for destruction of our whole system if we become that evil. Please, dear Lord. Okay, so he believes we are the Antichrist, leading the world into what he calls the Fourth Revolutionary War. It's summed up by his slogan, sooner or later, the endless spectacle is over. Then we will take revenge mercilessly. Dugan, so you know, his crest, if you will, is the ancient sign of chaos. He is an agent of chaos. as are the Iranian imams and twelvers. If you're a longtime listener of the program, you know what those are. Twelvers are people that actually believe if I create enough chaos in the world and set off enough nuclear bombs, then the Messiah, different than our Messiah, will return faster. So let's just get it over. That is what Dugan believes. The West is the Antichrist and must be destroyed. But all of modernity, everything modern, must be destroyed. You know, what he said, what Putin said yesterday was played before. I mean, we said it. Reagan said it against the Soviet Union. The USSR was an evil empire. And while we had our problems, our society had not become evil yet. Yesterday, Putin was praised by many on the right. And they're the words of traditionalism. I just want to get back to traditional families and our traditions. Because Barack knew that to make this change, we had to change the way we talk to each other and our traditions. So I want to get back to our traditions. Traditionalism is part of Dugan's philosophy, but it is not traditionalism with a small t. It is a capital T. Small t traditionalism, family values, God, country, honor. Okay. Capital T traditionalism is very different. It is heralding the end of modernity. It is a movement that is just as real and dangerous and deadly as Nazism, fascism, and communism. And any church, any group on the right that hears this kind of language and foolishly starts to fall in with people who are, quote, traditionalists, are going to spell grave trouble for the Republic and for a chance of being able to survive. Traditionalists despise the modern world. They believe that destruction is necessary for a utopia on earth. Not heaven. Armageddon comes, and instead of Christ coming down, his theology, a dark mass, then Russia steps in, and then we have the utopia. Dugan, Putin do not believe in the traditional values, the religious values, but they know how powerful this message is. They are selling you a cathedral that is actually a windowless concrete building with a basement that you don't want to know what's going on in the basement. KGB, Putin, been using Russian Orthodox Church as a weapon for years and using clergy as intelligence assets. But there's more to this story, and I'll get to that in 60 seconds. Now, when Vladimir Putin or Alexander Dugin or any of these capital T traditionalists speak, they will rail against the progress of the progressives, okay? That progress, the idea, the liberal idea is that progress is always good. Well, no, it's not. He's right. The left's idea of progress has led to transgender children on stripper poles. But what a capital T traditionalist believes is to create this utopia, we must destroy modernity. Collapsing the power grid, using EMPs, anything that destroys the modern world must be used the world over. Armageddon must happen so the modern world is completely destroyed, and out of those ashes, the Russian people will step up and fill their destiny. It's just another flavor of Malthusian poison. We just have to kill a lot of people, and then we'll have utopia. Traditionalism is easily anti-capitalist, anti-Christianity, anti-anything it wants. But it is a return to the medieval world first, Russian Renaissance second. These people are not your friends. They do not mean what they say. They do not speak for you. Traditionalism with a capital T wants to use war to launch the world out of the dark age because he believes we're now living in the dark ages, the whole of modern world. This is just evil. As any evil we have here, it is evil. Do not be fooled by false prophets. Many will come in his name. Do not be deceived. He believes that global conflict is inevitable. Violence is a requirement. The literal apocalypse is just merely a phase. Many of these things the Twelvers in Iran also believe, but under a different Messiah. They too threaten to burn the world and wash it in blood of the Jews and unbelievers. Iran is now an ally of Russia and China. Dugan is pushing for the same things, and he's been whispering all of this into Putin's ear, urging him to push the red button of extinction. Warning. I don't know how many times I can say this or will be allowed to say this at some point. Warning all conservatives. Capital T traditionalism. Alexander Dugin, Vladimir Putin are not your friends. Do not pick sides between these two evils because they're leading us to destruction, both sides.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to our channel so you'll be sure to see similar videos from Blaze TV with the added bonus of signaling YouTube that your voice and opinion still matters. And if you're looking for more great conservative content, check out one of the 2 videos suggested here.